Heartless by Marissa Meyer. Chapter 42. Hannah pushed his chair back from the table, and stood, adjusting his top hat. Are you sure you're desperate enough to come with us, Lady Pinkerton? He said, eyeing her. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to stay here and live your days in luxury? She stood too, facing him over the scattered flowers and felts. What is luxury if your life is a lie? I can never go back there. I belong with Jess now. Hannah's eyelid twitched, but he turned away, and approached the standing mirror Kath had once used to admire her macaron hat. He pulled it away from the shop's wall, and swiveled it on creaky wheels. The back was the same, another looking glass in a polished wooden frame. Except, Kath stepped around the table, her fingers trailing on the backs of the mismatched chairs. The reflection no longer showed the hat shop. It showed a glen of grasses and wildflowers and a treacle well glowing in the twilight. Step through, then, said Hannah, and his tone carried a warning. The sisters will know how desperate you truly are. She glanced back at Jest, but he nodded encouragingly. There was no doubt in his expression, unlike Hannah's, and that bolstered her. She knew this decision, once made, could never be undone. But what choice was left to her? She had meant what she said. She no longer belonged in Hearts. She would never see her parents again, or Cheshire, or Marianne. She wondered if she should leave them a note explaining where she'd gone. Maybe Raven would carry it back for her. But when she tried to think of what the note would say, all her thoughts turned bitter. Angry as she was with her parents, she didn't want that to be the last they ever heard from her. No, Hannah was a messenger who traversed between the looking glass regularly. When she was calm and happy in her new life, when she had saved Chess and she and Jess had their bakery, then she would send a letter to her parents and let them know she was all right. Until then, she would let them worry. They were the ones who had threatened to disown her after all. There was no going back. She was desperate, but she was also hopeful. Gathering her voluminous skirt, Kath stepped up to the mirror, inhaled a deep breath, and stepped through. She was back in the meadow, caged in by towering hedges on every side. The grass was speckled with crimson and gold, and the sugar molasses scent filled Kath's lungs. No sooner had she stepped forward than she heard footsteps behind her. Jess and Hannah, with Raven perched on Jess's shoulder. Hannah lifted an eyebrow and looked mildly surprised. Perhaps that Kath was desperate enough after all. But all he said was, haven't anything for warmth, Lady Pinkerton. She glanced down at her ball gown and bare arms. I was not expecting an adventure tonight, and my shawl was taken by the castle courtiers, he grunted, as if this were a weak excuse, and brushed past her, moving towards the well. Jess took hold of her hand. The bells on his hat jingled extra loud in the stillness. Hannah knocked his cane 3 times against the well's rocky ledge before leaning over, and smiling into its black depths. Hello, Tilly. 2 small hands appeared at the top of the well, followed by a child's gaunt face. She was ghost-like, not more than 6 years old, with white silver hair that cascaded down her back, and skin the color of milk thinned with water. Her eyes, in contrast, were coal black and far too big for her face. Where have you been, Hannah? Tilly said, pulling herself onto the wall and perching there on her knees. She wore a white muslin dress that was covered in filth, as though she'd just crawled out of a well. We've missed you. I'm sorry, love. It's been a busy time. Are your sisters around? They're at the bottom, racing boats made from 2 halves of a lady's boot. Tilly grinned. Both of her front teeth were missing. Is that Jest? And Raven as well. How do you do? Hello, Tilly, said Jest. Nevermore greeted the Raven. Tilly's gaze drifted to Catherine. And you are the girl he brought before, the one he finally kissed. And kissed. Kath blushed, but no one seemed to notice. Hannah cast his eyes upward. I could have gone without that knowledge, love. Tilly dropped her head to one shoulder and stared hard at Kath's skirt. Your ankle is repaired? Yes. Thank you for the treacle, Catherine stammered. It is not mine. Tilly held her gaze. But then, it isn't yours, either, though pay for it you did. Her lips pulled upward, but the smile made no attempt to reach her impenetrable eyes. Kath wondered if that youthful face had ever seen a true smile. She was unsettling. A child who carried the sorrow of an old crone. Tilly, said Hannah, we need to get through the looking glass again. Will you open the maze for us? The looking glass again, Tilly sings on. How many times have you passed back and forth now, Hannah? Too many to count, love. But this is important. You have said that too many times to count, she pouted. Always one is coming and one is going, but none are ever staying. Won't you come down to the bottom and race boats with us a while? I'll fix you a cup of piping hot treacle. That's a kind offer, but I'll have to accept it another time. For now, we must get through the maze. All 4 of you? Tilly asked. Hannah nodded. All 4 of us. The child heaved a great, heavy sigh. My sisters and I are ill, Hannah. We have been dying a long time, and must ask for payment to sustain us. I understand. What is the price for our passage? Tilly lifted her head, her black eyes staring up at him as if she were in a trance. Lacey wants a feather, black as stink. Elsie wants 3 joker's bells that twinkle, tink tink tink. And I shall take your time, dear Hannah. 5 minutes will do, I think. Hannah glanced back at their group before asking, nothing from the lady? Tilly's hollow gaze fell on Kath, and she had to force herself not to shy away. Slowly, the child shook her head. She has nothing we want. Not yet. Then she grinned again, that same eerie, gap-toothed smile. Kath stood by silently while they made their payment. A tail feather from Raven and 3 bells, torn from Jest's hat, all dropped into the well. Hannah went last, pulling out his pocket watch, and turning the hand forward. 5 minutes. He didn't seem happy about it, but neither did he complain. Tilly nodded once payment was made, and vanished back into the well. Kath tensed, but there was no scream, and no splash down below. You are running out of minutes, Hannah. They turned. A new girl sat cross-legged on a fallen, moss-covered log. She was identical to Tilly, with the waxen skin and eerie dark eyes. Only her silvery hair was cropped short like wild leaves. I know, Elsie, said Hannah. You keep taking them from me? She scrutinized him, unblinking, for a heartbeat too long before she allowed a closed-lipped smile. How much longer will you run from time? For as long as I can. A third voice sang. Time would never find you here. Kath spun again. The third girl stood beside the wall of hedges, again a mirror image of her sisters, although her shining hair had grown all the way to her ankles. Huge, bottomless eyes watched them across the glen. A door was now set into the hedges behind the third sister, an enormous wooden structure with black iron hinges. Tilly stood beside it, digging her bare toes in the dirt and gripping its enormous handle. You could stay with us, you know, said the third girl. Hannah shook his head. I'm sorry, Lacey, but I can't. What about them? Asked Tilly, pointing her chin at Kath and Jess and Raven. Kath was glad when Jess answered, as she didn't think she could speak. I'm sorry, but we must go back to chess. We have a role to play. Whoa, yes, said Elsie. 2 rooks, a pawn, and a queen. That's how the riddle begins, but howsoever shall it end? She started to laugh. Kath shivered. We shall see what role you have to play, said Tilly. Once you reach the other side, added Lacey. Tilly pulled open the ancient door. Its iron hinges creaked, and the wood grated against the moss-covered stone. Kath could see nothing beyond but more hedges. In unison, the sisters murmured, we will all greet fate on the other side. Kath took a hesitant step forward, with Jess gripping her hand, and had a mere step away. As they approached the door, she saw that there were stairs on the other side, a short flight of crumbling stone steps that dropped down into another forest meadow. Overgrown hedges pushed in on either side, making the stairwell too narrow for her and Jess to walk side by side. She followed Hada through, lifting her skirt to keep from tripping on the uneven stones. Leaves clung to her hem. Shadows pushed in from the sides. The moment they passed through, the massive door slammed shut, making Kath jump. Jess squeezed her shoulder, and his presence alone warmed the chill from her bones. They reached the bottom of the steps, and Kath paused. Her brow furrowed. She glanced back, but the stairs were gone. She was staring at the empty wall of an enormous hedge, with no doors and no exits. She turned again, her heart pattering against her sternum. They were still in the same forest glen with the same treacle well, but this time, the three sisters were already waiting.